Anything else that came up in cases or consultations?
So let me think back this week. I did do a lot of EB-1A consultations. Every case is very, very unique. So I'm working with a lot of people right now where we're not quite ready to file, and we're deciding whether to file now, where I think the case is maybe a 60% chance of approval. Not super strong, but definitely viable, where they can meet at least 3 criteria and at least have some solid final merits evidence as well. But they're at the point where their priority date is not necessarily going to be current if they file EB-1A, because their priority date is from 2023 or 2022. And they maybe have a 60% case right now. We've been strategizing different ways to maybe get them up to a higher percentage of approval, like maybe 85% or something like that. And it's surprisingly difficult. And I think a lot of people who are prepping for EB-1A don't understand how wide the gap can be between like a reasonably approvable case and a really strong case. In a couple of scenarios that I've been giving guidance on, the person has 3 or 4 criteria, and those criteria are really solid. So if USCIS uses a plain language kind of analysis and adjudicates the case solely on the criteria, it's going to be approved. But final merits are not really that impressive. So this is the kind of case that I think can be approved maybe 60% of the time. I do think it's more than 50% just based on experience. This person has a very real chance of approval. However, they also have a very real chance of denial. And so for them to get their final merits up, it's not necessarily about doing more activity. It's about getting more of those prestige factors. So there have been a couple of people where I've been talking to them and rising to the next level. So either principal, if they're in an individual contributor role, or director or vice president, if they're in kind of a senior management role, would be really helpful for their case. And so when they're in that scenario, I'm talking about what promotion timelines look like, what they're expecting. Are they expecting to change companies or jobs to kind of get that next career level bump? And then along with that, we're talking about how much their salary might rise. So there's a little bit more career consultation that goes into that. Those kinds of factors do make a big difference and could potentially influence the case from being like 60% to 85%. For people where promotions are not really in the works and probably not what they're going for in their career anyways, settling on a particular industry position can be really helpful. So finding their way to some kind of advisory board that's really important, some kind of technical committee that's really important, editor of a really important journal. These kinds of things can also like sub in for the career developments. And these kinds of things can really help focus the case and build it into that really, really strong kind of case. So there's different things that people can look at, but the EB-1A profile building does look a lot different once you have that 60% approval case and you're making the decision on whether or not to give it a try or to wait and see if you can build a much, much stronger case.
So the gap can be wide, but if you do land that committee position or editor role, then that in itself could significantly boost your chances. So at that point, it's not really about doing more activities, but getting that one activity that is almost like a for a top position.
Yeah, that's what takes like a minimally viable case up to being a strong case. And it really isn't about number of activities at that point. Volume of activity is really important when you are adding criteria, but once you have like 12 judge roles, adding more is not really going to make the case stronger, right? Like USCIS would accept that criteria for you no matter what. You could do 12, you can do 50. The 51 doesn't necessarily look stronger to USCIS, except if you get like a really prestigious judge role that you can highlight up front. And at that point, it does become that much more important to USCIS, and it does look like a much, much stronger case.